Hello, my name is Nicholas Bell. I'm the chief film critic with IONCINEMA, and it is my great pleasure to be speaking with Marja Nango and Ingir Nango, who are the directors of the short film Noktimacht, which is the Sami title. The English language title is The Tongues, and I want to get into what we might be losing in translation there. But they have directed this short film, which has been submitted for Best Live Action Short at the 93rd Academy Awards. It's traveled several film festivals, won Best Short at Palm Springs Film Festival, for instance. So a few people have been able to experience already. It's not Marja's first short, and not the first short dealing with the Sami culture, which you both are part of. So can we start with the title? What exactly are we missing when we translate it to English as The Tongues?
Well, word-wise, it is the same. But culturally, we have, that's maybe the only thing that is culturally kind of rooted very into the Sami culture is kind of the belief system around the edge of the reindeer tongue, which you're not supposed to eat as a human because then you become a liar. That's like kind of the nugget for the Sami audience. But in a way, I think even though you don't know about this as an international audience, I think you get the sense of that there is something about the tongues correlate with the reindeers and Sami culture.
Yeah, for sure. It also, I was looking up that reindeer tongue is considered a delicacy in certain cultures, and that there's a problem with reindeer being slaughtered specifically for their tongues. But in regard to your film, how it relates to what happens to your main character, who we open upon being sexually assaulted in a very visceral, very disturbing presentation, which of course, as it should be, is hard to see. But your film is highlighting the abuse of women in indigenous cultures, but also is an infrequent presentation of Sami culture as it is. Like there aren't a lot of depictions of Sami culture. I know that Marja, you worked as a reindeer coordinator on Sami Blood, directed by Amanda Kernel from a few years back. And it's my understanding that in the Disney film Frozen 2, they have taken some elements of Sami culture. But can you talk about your decision to present this side of culture that we so rarely see?
So for us as artists, we don't want to, show any romantic pictures of our culture, because we have a lot of problems in Sami, a lot of traumas, and one of them is sexual assault and rape, and I think a lot of these problems we have inherited from the colonization of Sami. So Marja, could you explain something more?
Yeah, I think when me and Ingir were writing the script, we wanted to make the film from inside of Sami, that both the protagonist and the antagonist were Samis, because often when Sami directors make films, the bad guy are colonizers, foreigners, or kind of Norwegian, Swedish, or our colonization viewpoint. So we wanted to make about kind of within the Sami perspective, because it's kind of also a criticism towards the colonization of our culture, because in older times, just one generation back from our parents, our grandparents' generation, back then the men and women in Sami culture were equals in the reindeer herding. But because of the laws changed the reindeer herding, also it affected the dynamics between females and males. So now females are kind of below men in status, and that's why when a Sami man rapes a Sami woman, the kind of the public opinion sides with the man, because he has an role in the community as a reindeer herder in the mountains, because the system was like that only one person in a marriage can have the reindeer license. That means one of the people in the marriage have to get like a job outside, and that has become the woman. So the woman has to take a normal job like in schools and papers and like office jobs, while the man is kind of the herder in the mountains. And some women are herders also in the mountains, but they are not viewed as valuable as men. And that's like there are many layers of why the man is Sami and why he is raping the woman. It's like many like artistic layers of what we are like making this universe in this short film. So it's like many answers actually to this question, and I guess we can talk about the layering for how long, but that's like the main layers.
Okay.
And we wanted also to bring this topic up in a short film, because it's been very taboo actually to even use the words of rape. And when me and Ingir have been promoting the film in the Sami media, we have frequently used the Sami word rape. It actually sits uncomfortable with me too in our language, not in English and Norwegian, but in Sami it's like when you use the word like as when you talk about the film, it is different in our culture, to be honest. It is more hidden and more unspoken of. So in a way, I think the film is quite like a different Sami film and quite challenging the Sami audience. And luckily, we have gotten so good reception also amongst the Sami audience that it has kind of provoked people in a good way, not in a bad way. It has like raised the subject into radios, like me and Ingir talking about the film every time we are doing something good about it. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah. I think even from, it's a 15-minute short film, that you do get the sense of a lot of layers. Like the rapist, it's clear he feels very entitled to do what he does. But as I'd imagine that filming this, even though it's both of you appear in it, and there's that kind of a safety net of, you being sisters, but I imagine this was still quite difficult to make.
Yeah. It has been a long
actually from
journey.
the get-go, because
Yeah,
I guess it's difficult to assume who's speaking first. But yeah, I mean, Ingir, we started writing actually this script in 2015. So that was before worldwide the Me Too was raised, and so when we started writing, this topic was even more taboo in Sápmi, and in a way, as Me Too happened, it opened up the swear a little bit more, but still it was challenging making it, because in all areas kind of, because every time you are telling people in the community what you're making, you have to kind of just admit that you're making a film about an assault. And luckily all the people who joined our film were very supportive, like the Sami reindeer herders in Mauken. They were very supportive. They said it's important to make a film about this toxic masculinity because they are totally familiar with it. But even though they, for example, understood it, they also didn't want to talk about it so explicitly. They were like, yeah, we understand it and we support this film, but we didn't manage to talk about it more because we have this culture in Sápmi that it's difficult to talk about this. And also like regarding production itself, we have the different aspects. We have that Sami films not so often get production money because the Norwegian perspective is that Samis are less good at making films, so they are like historically have not been so supportive. Luckily we got support, but I think it was because we had a Norwegian producer, like a Norwegian film producer company with us, because they valued as the professional. And luckily, like artistically, we have managed to show that we make good films. This is a very artistic, challenging, layered film, and it doesn't go to the stereotypics of what Sami film is. and we're not romanticizing anything, but we are still showing the beauty of our costumes, language, and reindeers. But also, like when we were shooting it was extremely cold. We had a very small crew, so everyone had to work outside their field. My favorite joke is that I was shoveling snow, like maybe more than anyone. and like for the challenging scenes, Ingir and Johan, who were acting the rape scene, that was like the most challenging day we had as a crew, but especially with the actors. We had actually a stunt coordinator for this scene because it was so mentally, emotionally, physically challenging. And our stunt coordinator Jan said that even though it's not a real rape, the body will remember it as a real rape, because you're putting up your body in a position that you in your mind don't want to go to.
Right.
So I think that was kind of the most challenging day artistically for the actors. And I think not only Ingrid and Johan had like how to say aftermath, but I think everyone kind of had the aftermath after that shooting day. And also it's quite raw and hard the whole way. So it was quite an emotional journey the whole way, and it's added when it's super cold. 30 degrees Celsius was the coldest day. So it always like tied together, like because it was so cold, that's why we had to shoot it on film, because the digital would not have worked. So everything like the production wise is tied together like this. We had to do like that because of that. So it's a very like wrapped up in a bundle, the challenges. And do you want to add anything about the challenges?
Not especially. I think you have mentioned everything we need to mention. Yeah. Other than that, we really we began this project in 2015, so it has been a very long journey. So so now we are finally here. That's cool.
Yes, it's very cool. Watching your performance, it's brutal to see, of course. But even after that, I think that you both do an excellent job of showing the disorientation after a trauma, and it's also filmed with Ingir's movements, but also with what you do with the camera, and how your brain and body are responding to the surroundings after going through something like that. I thought felt very authentic. Your director of photography, was it Victor Seguin?
From France.
Yes, I've seen his film Gagarin, his excellent cinematographer. Was that already in your mind before filming, that is the structure of this journey for the short?
That was what we wanted to make the film about, like the traumatic aftermath, her like psychological journey after the rape. That's why we started straight with the rape, just to make the whole film about everything the character is experiencing. We wanted it to be like this nightmare-ish feeling after, that she is totally, in a way, free in the nature, but so alone and so kind of in a claustrophobic way. It's a wide lens which is like captured by the fear of him being close by, captured by the fear of the nature that it's cold. Will she manage to kind of get anywhere? Like me and Ingrid always talk about that. It's of course about her physical survival, but this way more about the soul survival of the character, that she wants to survive her soul through this. So that's kind of what we try to show in the scenes, that's what she's fighting for, really. She's trying to like regain soul fragments that she lost in the rape. And we wanted also the sister character to be there as like, sometimes you can get help to get soul fragments back because they're like energetically connected. And that's also how we want to, in a way, talk about traumas, that what people experience when they experience a trauma is that they lose parts of their soul, to be honest. And what you're trying to do by going to psychiatrist, you're trying to regain the soul fragments back to your soul, and we want to show that in like this snowy landscape, but we wanted to do it there because actually there is where me and Ingir were living when we wrote the script. That was our landscape. And when you are like in that kind of landscape, you are intertwined psychologically with the nature. And that sounds very cliche when you say it, but when you're living in that kind of area, you are kind of bouncing off the nature and the winds and the weather especially. So that's why we want to shoot it in February also, because the weather is quite special. It's very quite nice lighting in that month. But yeah, so that's what we wanted to make the film about, like the aftermath and her journey. And we were not actually planning, like when we started to write, that she was going to revenge herself. That kind of happened organically when we wrote the film. So it was quite interesting that we discovered that we had like written a poetic rape revenge in because that was not where we originally planned to go, but it took us there. And of course, it's like, you know this, but of course, as maybe a normal audience can think, maybe especially where you're not so used to watching films, in something like, are we trying to say that violence is good? Of course not, but that was her way of regaining her soul fragments back to her. That was her like soul revenge to get it back. And also we wanted to show that when you experience something very brutal, that you like energy-wise get brutal towards you, you can sometimes be a brutal back. That's why she kind of suddenly she's getting this rage in her that she wants to get out of her, to be honest. So it's like character's emotional journey is kind of me and Ingrid's kind of main point writing it, but it gets of course lost in the bigger discussions because it is like special color, is a taboo topic, it's reindeers, but that's me and Ingrid's like driving point when we wrote this is her journey, and we want to show it in a different way. You may experience it while you are at a different place.
Well, watching it, of course, I kept thinking, I hope something happens to him. But I think it's presented in a way that's not, of course, glorifying violence, but it's necessary that she does this, especially with the second confrontation where, you know, he's continuing to threaten her. But there's nothing about that felt exploitive or, if anything, of course, it really taps into that necessary catharsis, I think, for the audience as well. I wanted that there's of course very little dialogue, but when she says sister, of course she's thinking of her literal sister, but in my mind I also went to she's referring to the reindeer as well. And so I think that I got that there's this poetic connection between nature and of course the other humans, but the dialect is that it's my understanding that there are specific Sami dialects and even other cultures within Sami, like the reindeer herding, which you were both descended from. Is that Skolt? Is the no? Okay.
So we are Nordic Samis, the largest group of Sami. Okay. And we also speak Nordic Sami. That is also the largest Sami living language.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that Nordic group of, or the Nordic language, Sami language, there are a lot of dialects too. So, yeah.
I wanted to kind of stress that because there are so few representations that it's important to realize that there are a lot of different kind of stories to tell and a lot of different facets to the culture that are just what we've kind of seen thus far, as your film also, I believe, highlights. And not to cut you short, but before we run out of time, I was delighted to see that you're developing a feature as well, the reindeer herder. And if you can speak just for a minute on that, and then is it an extension of Nokjamak? Because this, I also felt, while this is a very stressful thing to watch, it left me wanting more of the story of these women. So if it isn't a continuation of their story, will you return to them?
So me and Marja, we have talked about that we want to make, maybe a feature someday about this topic, but not now.
Okay.
Now we're going to make another story, but from a male perspective.
Okay.
So yeah, and the working title is now "I love my Gorohedji," as I love my reindeer herder.
Okay. Nice.
And it's a love story. Marja, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I can tell a little bit. So we are now developing the script, and luckily we have got some like support from, for example, the Norwegian Film Institute and also the Sami Film Institute. So it's quite great that we have gotten support from them. It's super important that they show that they also are like rooting for diversity, because that's been a problem in the Norwegian Film Institute, like just on a side note. But yeah, the feature, I love my Gorohedji, I love my reindeer herder, it's set in the kind of same environment, Njokchamat, but it's more, it's about a young Sami reindeer herder boy named Ailo, and we follow him through his journey to kind of break the stereotypical male way of being a man in Sápmi. So he's like kind of breaking free from toxic masculinity. So that's in a way how it's connected to Njokchamat, because we are also dealing with toxic masculinity there, but here the man is not toxic himself. And there are many like similarities, like artistic wise, between the feature and Njokchamat, regarding like, I think the rawness, but this is more like a narrative story. It's not that artistic layered, not so poetic. It's more like a narrative story that we follow from beginning to end, where it's more like we are also in the village, towns, and also in the mountains. But we follow this young boy as he kind of discovers his own sexuality in this conservative Sami milieu, where, for example, is like heteronormative views on everything. So he kind of is breaking that barrier, and we follow him. So it's a quite like a strong film, and we're having a lot of fun working on it. So I think it will be also quite an interesting film when it's when we get to shoot it.
It sounds interesting. Do you have an idea when you might shoot? Later this year, next year?
So it's all depending on actually grants.
Okay.
Or how to say production grants in Norway, because the last time a Sami feature was granted grants here in Norway is 12 years ago. That's the last time a Sami was produced. To this date, there has not been produced a Sami film for the last 12 years in Norway. In Sweden they have, not in Norway. And that's a kind of crazy situation we are in. And luckily we have made this short film, Njokchamat, that has shown that it is interest for our films and our stories. So we hope this is changing now. So hopefully if we get grants, we will shoot as soon as we have like the script done, which is will be this year.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I really was disturbed, but also enjoyed your short film, and best of luck going forward in securing a nomination. And I'm looking forward to revisiting your past short work, which I haven't seen, and also what you continue to work on. But again, thank you for taking the time to speak about it today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And we're also a little bit disturbed by this film. It's quite disturbing and raw.
But sometimes that we need to go there. We need to confront it. So
yeah, and sometimes we do. I agree.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.